Okay, hello everybody and welcome to this very special Valo webinar all about work-life balance. And today we're lucky enough to have a special guest on today to have a talk about what work-life balance really does look like in today's new digital age. My name is Daniel Anderson. I'm the Valo Partner Manager and Product Evangelist and also Microsoft MVP based here in Melbourne. I'll be your host today, and I'll be, as I said, I'll be joined by a very special guest from New Zealand, Debbie Ireland. Now, Debbie is the Share the Point CEO, a digital workplace strategist, a change catalyst, also a Microsoft Regional Director, and author of a very interesting book, and is the topic of our conversation today, Work-Life Balance, My Ass. Now, if you want to connect with Debbie on either Twitter or LinkedIn, you can do so following those handles on that slide there. Now, just a little bit of housekeeping here. This is a Microsoft Teams live event. So we do have the Q&A open. So if you've got any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to jump in there and ask away. And if we've got time, we will respond to those. If not, we can take them offline as well. There's a couple of hashtags there. If you're using your socials, tweet out or post out with those hashtags. Also, obviously, this webinar will be recorded. So for those of you who are unable to join live or would like to watch the recording, this will be distributed after the webinar as well. Now, as a very special part of the webinar too, we do have a special draw that the winner will win their own actual hard copy of Debbie's book, Work-Life Balance, My Ass. So it will be a random draw from all the registered users. So if you haven't registered and you're just joining through the attendee link of this webinar, then I'll post that registration link in the Q&A section as well throughout the webinar, and jump on there and register for your chance to win a hard copy, and that'll be drawn on this Monday, the 15th of March at 9 a.m. So with that being said, what we are now going to do is kick things off, and we're going to bring Debbie on to the stage now. So welcome, Debbie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Daniel. And I'll take it away, shall I?
Over to you.
Thank you. So, work-life balance. If I could see you all, which I really wish I could, and I miss that so much, I would be looking for your responses to this question, but feel free to put it in the chat if you want to. I'm just wondering, and I'm pretty sure your answer is going to be the same as most other people I talk to, has anyone ever reached the nirvana of work-life balance? And secondly, I just want you to ask yourself if since COVID, since the lockdown, and I know we're all in different places all around the world, and some of you are still in lockdown probably. I'm really lucky because I live in New Zealand and we've very light touch here. But how many hours, there's so much more working from home in general, how many hours are you now working compared to prior to this whole pandemic? Has it increased? And probably more importantly, and it might take a little more courage to answer this question, do you think that COVID has had an impact on your well-being? It could be that you're exhausted, you can't switch off, you're expected to over-deliver, you've got Zoom fatigue or Teams or whatever whatever these online meetings you're doing are, but it's all too overwhelming. So ask yourself those questions, because as the title of my book says, Work-Life Balance, My Ass. And I think most people actually agree with me here. I don't think any of you are alone if you have said yes, your hours have increased, or yes, it's negatively impacted your well-being. This research actually comes from Satya Nadella's keynote at Ignite last year, and I was intrigued. I tried to get some more relevant local stats, but just to show you, the workday length has increased by 17% in Japan, 25% in the USA, and 45% in Australia. And I think New Zealand would be pretty close to Australia, which is just amazing that that's what's happened with people working from home. If they're not already used to it, it's something I've done for years, but for a lot of people it is new. The other thing was that one of the other stats was that a third of workers say that well-being is being negatively impacted. That's a third of all the responses to the survey, and 30% of them say that the pandemic has increased burnout. So those stats are pretty high and just raise once again the absolute need for us to look at our well-being in the workplace and what is this work-life balance thing. So work-life balance implies that there is a time where work can be stopped and where life magically starts. That they're equally proportioned. So there's 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of play. And that implies that they're actually separate to each other, that we've got life on this side and work on this side, and that they're absolutely disconnected. And that's how we think that we can get balance, by keeping them as disconnected entities. So when we focus on work-life balance in terms of time, both segments are competing for time. So family demands less work time, work demands less family time, and therefore we're always, well, we feel like we're always giving something up in order to satisfy the other demand. And there's never, ever enough time. Introduce digital technologies, mobile, remote working, flexi time, constant notifications on all sorts of devices from all sorts of social media and the rest of it. And where does that balance go? When does the clock actually switch off? So we hear about this work-life balance so much that we assume it's the answer, and we assume it's what we should be striving for. But in fact, I believe it's actually impossible. So today I'm going to dispel 3 myths, which, by the way, these follow very closely the theme of my book, so you're getting a bit of a taster for it. But yeah, so I started my own self-development journey, I guess, at about the age of 11, and have dedicated time and reading and research ever since. It's probably been in the last 20 odd years that the focus has been around work-life balance and my curiosity into how to get more out of my life. So it could be as simple as setting goals or achieving or constantly improving what I have, or being the best that you possibly can be. But for me, it was also about juggling the numerous other things that life kept throwing at me. So today I want to share 3 alternatives to what I call the myths, and I call these my 3 M's. And with these, you can look to remove the guilt from the competing demands by putting yourself first, and by figuring out what's really important to you. I'll hopefully give you some tips to get some focus on how to focus on what really matters most to you, so that you can gain some control over that overwhelming sense of stress or feelings of stress that you might have. And then most importantly for me, it's about learning how to live with a sense of calm and coming back to the essence of what balance really is. So, myth number 1, work and life can be separated. So let's start with this concept of separation. The idea that work and life could be separated came originally from the days of shift work or factories, when you would clock in and then you'd leave work at a specific time and you wouldn't consider your job until the next time you showed up. So time was the separator. In reality, and I'm sure so many people have got so many stories since all this working from home has become the norm now, but work and life can't be considered as 2 disconnected entities. If we look at life in lockdown, and ever since, as we broach this hybrid way of working, I've heard stories about, hey, the dining room's taken over as the office, or people having to carve out a piece of their garage just to get some peace and quiet, or Yeah, any number of things. I actually have a friend in Auckland who told me how during lockdown her and her husband had to seriously juggle so much they kept this, and she sent me this screenshot of her whiteboard, and the whiteboard tracked, they were both working and had constant calls, online calls all day, but they have an 18-month-old, so they had to juggle between who was taking care of the child, who was going to be on a Zoom call at what time, and any number of iterations, and it was just a nightmare. So they had no choice but to try and manage it the best way that they knew how. The other thing that I heard a lot about during lockdown, and still do actually, and I see this very much with my own partner when we first went into lockdown, is that as people get into their own rhythms of this home, work, life juggling thing, people would send emails at all sorts of times, because sometimes they'd have to work after hours. And for some people this was usual, and for others, many people, they'd feel obliged to respond to those emails as soon as they got them and compelled to answer them whenever they arrived, which of course just caused lots more stress, and the emails wouldn't stop and their time wouldn't stop, so it got harder and harder to manage things. So for me, I actually thought I was doing okay at one stage. I was ticking some boxes in some areas of my life, and I thought my work-life balance was doing pretty good. And I'm going to tell a little story back to, it was 2003. And at that stage, I was living in Auckland, and I was managing a consulting company, striving to be the best I could at work, climbing the corporate ladder, achieving lots, and in a role that was challenging me. So they were all really, really good ticks. It meant that I was earning well and I could provide for Sophie, who's in that picture, and she was 3 at the time. And as a single parent, this is and always has been my #1 priority. But I was driving home one night, and this is when the reality actually sunk in. I looked at my day and I thought, my day consists of dropping Sophie at 6 a.m.-ish to a preschool care place, because it was too early to drop her at the preschool. And in the winter, it was cold, it was dark. Poor little Sophie would have to eat her breakfast in the car, which just made me feel incredibly guilty as a working mum. And I just felt like I was always absent and I was always rushing. My day would then continue on where I'd drive an hour in rush hour traffic through the delightful Auckland traffic, and there wasn't any even split of time. No 8 hours work, 8 hours this, whatever. It was all blurred. I'd leave work and I'd take home the day emotionally, as well as hours and hours of additional work. Technology, of course, played a part. Mobile, email, as well as having bosses in Australia at the time, so there was a time difference. And by the time I picked up Sophie, it was dark again, and I was often late, and I was often rushing again, and I'd have to rush through the nightly, through dinner, and then through the nightly bed, bath and book routine, and again filled with just so much guilt and remorse, and I'd continue to work. And so all the time this is happening, I was taking very little time for me, and as a result, my physical health I wasn't taking care of that, and neither was I recognizing that growing habit of the well-deserved glass of wine at the end of the day, which the days just seemed to rinse and repeat. And I realized this actually isn't the life I want for me or for Sophie. And I knew I was juggling the best way that I knew how, but it was also incredibly clear to me how one part of my life had such a massive impact on the other, that they're not separated, that they're actually very, very much intertwined, very much connected, and that you can't, in fact, separate work and life. So this brought me to my first M, which is meaning. And I needed to find more meaning behind what I was doing. So more so, I began to question the purpose, or redefined what was important to me and why. To do this, I kind of had to strip away the busyness. So it wasn't about what I was doing. It wasn't about my job, or it wasn't about who I was or the roles I was playing, being a business person, a parent, a partner, a boss, a friend, employee. I know it's not about the roles we play, but if you strip all those away, and what do you have? the why. It's about why am I doing what I'm doing? And the point here is that we need to get really clear about what we want. Imagine doing a handstand. So this picture, by the way, is of an amazing lady who lives in Tauranga, originally from Perth, and she actually teaches people how to do handstands. So to do a handstand, you need a really strong core in order to get up there in the first place. So think about your core as your meaning, as your stabilizer. You also need to be able to visualize that that end result. You need to be able to think or have belief in yourself that you can actually do this handstand. So that's another really important part of it. So if you interrogate your values, you will find your core meaning. So how do we do that? How do we identify what is actually meaningful now? It is proven, and you've probably heard the saying that meaning drives performance. So the first step is to take a look at the results you're currently getting in every area of your life. So if you look at your work, your family, relationships, health, spiritual growth, what is important and what is your current meaning that's driving the results that you're currently getting? And if you like these results, great, keep going. But if there are areas that you could change and improve, start to uncover and look at those. One nice little technique actually I quite like is called an energy audit. So you can try and do this with me now if you have a pen and paper. But this is to see perhaps just where you're most stressed. So it's more about awareness or checking in to assess what's what. So do this now if you want. First of all, you have to identify key areas in your life to assess. So those key areas could be time, energy, health, money, relationships, creativity, social, family, whatever you want to, but figure out what works for you. And then list these and write down next to each one, how energized or charged do you feel in each one of those areas? With 0 being that you're on absolutely empty, or 10 being that you are fully fueled and charged. So once you've done that, you'll get a little bit of a gauge on what parts of your life you're feeling stress or you're not, or you've got energy. And then just take a quick look and think, well, is there an area that you could perhaps make some immediate change? And one thing that you could do right now that would just make an adjustment of that dial closer to the green side. And perhaps just choose one action for shifting the dial in just one area and see how that changes your stress levels. The big thing here is to, yes, make this a regular check-in because it will start to remove the energy blocks and that kind of stuff. But remember, it is just a snapshot. It's just for assessing. It's not really something that you've got to go and beat yourself up and say, oh my gosh, I'm on empty on just about every area of my life, but rather one to assess where you're at. So myth number 2, balance not only assumes equal time. In order to achieve the balance, it implies aiming for the middle. And as you probably have all heard, magic, progress, results, success, and excitement even don't happen in the middle. They happen at the extremes. So in order to achieve extraordinary results and find that passion, you have to go to the extremes and you have to focus on what matters most. So to do this, you have to go out of balance, but that really is okay. So let me give you a few examples. Maybe you focus for a while on a huge project at work, and this project consumes every waking hour. It's all you can think about. You're swallowed up by the thrill of making it all happen, and it takes priority, and it is what matters most. Or another example, if you enter into like an extreme sports event and every day is centered around the training schedule, and it's at this extreme where the magic happens. You know, like you wake up and it's you're worried about what you have to do that particular day to reach the next milestone. And for this period of time, that's what matters most. Or And this is another example again. If you've ever experienced the first few weeks of a newborn baby, where that tiny creature relies solely on you, your life is nothing but intense commitment, and that is what matters most. So giving your all is necessary to get the results, but you know it's only for a limited time. So instead for me, after I worked a little bit on finding my purpose and meaning, I then discovered my second M, which is matters most. And I continued to focus on what mattered most by going to various extremes. So I moved to Tauranga, having grown up on a lifestyle block in Rotorua. This is something that I wanted to try and recreate for my daughter. So I bought a 9-acre farmlet, and that was what mattered most to me for this particular time in my life. I started my own business, and for a time that mattered most. Work got a lot of priority. I poured my heart and soul into more and more work and was hugely productive, and I was getting extreme results. So if I go back to my handstand analogy here, as with Julia, based on a strong foundation and core, which is our meaning, we can go to the extremes. However, like in this picture, Julia knows how far to go before reaching her tipping point. If you go too much, if you go too much of an extreme for too long a time, out of balance, and you fall over, you reach your tipping point and you can overstep it. I definitely discovered this when I was in the work extreme, and it was to the detriment of other areas of my life. Sophie was growing up before my eyes and I felt like I was missing it. I didn't realize how septic the relationship I was in at the time was, which led to legal battles and circumstances beyond my control and cost lots of money. Any sort of things can happen when you go too much to one extreme or another, or you misjudge the balance and hit that tipping point. So what are some things that you can think of that how do you recognize when you get to that tipping point? For me, I think it can be as simple as when my energy level drops. So I lose focus, I get unproductive, I start going round and round in circles because I haven't taken a break for too long at work. I also find it very evident in the connection or the loss of it with people in my family or friends. But it's really good to actually identify what you see as being your tipping points, and then to also have some go-tos on how to bring yourself back and allow you to go to another extreme. So if you think about things you do now that might relieve your stress and recharge you, a run after work, for example, to clear the head, or taking time to go for a coffee with your partner and reconnect, or making time to do something with your kids that they want to do. But whatever it is, you have to go back to your meaning. So I found this a really interesting quote from the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Very good book if you haven't already read it. If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And what he wrote about was that the word priority came into the English language in the 1400s, but it was singular. So it meant the very first or just one. So it was singular for the next 500 years. And it was only in the 1900s that we began to pluralize the term and we started talking about having priorities. And it really does seem mad that you can have multiple firsts or multiple priorities. It's illogical that we thought that we could bend this word. And you think about it, even in meetings, you know, we're going to have priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. And it seems crazy because it should be that there is one priority. So yeah, I found that quite fascinating. And when you think about it like that, it's like we should actually just be focusing on one thing, one priority at a time. The one thing's another book, actually. I think I mention it later. Yeah. So another thing relevant to this is how good are you at putting yourself first? And how good are you at putting yourself first without guilt? So most people, many people have a problem saying no, and part of the guilt is because they don't want to say no. It's like we've developed a culture of saying yes to everything. But actually, and I like the way of thinking of it where you turn it on its head. So every time we say yes to something, we're actually saying no to something else. And we're actually saying no to things that are potentially more important. So if you say yes to doing the emails after work or staying on late at work or whatever, working overtime, you're actually saying no to spending time with your family. If you say yes to an early morning meeting, you could be saying no to going to the gym or whatever, but it's switching that way that you're looking at it. So we need to start thinking about how do we stop saying yes to everything and only say yes to what's important. And again, I think it comes back to the meaning you're holding and focusing on what matters most. Figuring out what your meaning is and what matters most at any one time will help you identify what you should be saying yes to and therefore what you should be saying no to. Myth number 3. Balance implies that there's an end point, something we attain, we achieve, or that there is actually a destination. If you Google it and you look at the results for work-life balance, there is literally millions of search results on this whole work-life balance anomaly. How to achieve it in 10 steps, learn 20 tips and tricks, 8 strategies, 15 do's and don'ts. It's endless. But it also suggests that it's something that you can attain, that it has a destination, that it is possible. So Gary Keller, who wrote the book, The One Thing, again, another really, really good book worth reading, said it, I think, incredibly well when he said, viewed wistfully as a noun, balance is lived practically as a verb. And I think that says it all. It is not a destination. The destination is constantly evolving. It's a process. It's ongoing about progress and change. And even if you look at your meaning, my meaning 15 years ago was, or my goals 15 years ago were so different. Even 10, even 2 years ago, it all changed again. And I created new meaning for new results and new things that were happening in my life. It's not something that I'm going to work towards and then all of a sudden get there. So this brings me to the third M. I created meaning for what I wanted. So meaning drives results, remember? And for a while, I hit the pause button on doing so much at work. What mattered most for a while was my health. So I tried that extreme. I ran half a marathon and I gave up drinking and I swapped wine time on Thirsty Thursdays for casual coffee catch-ups. And my life became very rounded. Everyone around me saw it and saw how much it changed me. And I was creating my third M, which I call magic. So I got to spend quality years with my daughter as she went through her teens and left for university. And this is time you can't get back. I once read that watching your 6-year-old son play a soccer game is not the same as taking your adult boy to a World Cup match. It's time you just simply cannot replace and cannot get back. And we need to look at that because it's disappearing as fast as it arrives. I also eventually manifested the most wonderful man into my life. Just got married 2 weeks ago, actually. And from a business point of view, we design our business around what matters most with our lives. Our clients, our travel, our team meetings. My staff all work school hours or ones that work with their lives and make time to attend their kids' events. One travels around the USA. Well, she used to in a camper van. She can't at the moment because of COVID, but she's my mum. So instead, think about the magic that you can create. And for me, the magic all sat in one very simple message. It was about contentment. Rather than striving for the eternal destination or attainment or for perfection, it was about being happy with where you are at right now. So today I want to share my magic kit. which you'll also find in my book. But I recommend, in a lot more detail, but I recommend that you create your own magic kit. And these are just a few things that I have in mine. So the M is for moment, or miracle of the moment. So when you're at work, focus on that and that alone. When you're with your kids, that's what matters most. Focus on that. In other words, be present. The A is for acceptance. So this is actually changing your mindset to be one of curiosity and be accepting of where you are now, to see how your perception changes your outlook on life in general. G is gratitude, and when we think of the things that we're thankful for, gratitude has to be my number one go-to for anything whenever you're feeling down or lost or whatever. If you can actually just revert back to thinking of the smallest things that you're thankful of, it alters the chemistry of your brain. And once you start to focus on even the smallest things, they will grow. You'll notice more of them, and what we focus on grows. So gratitude is simply the magic pill, if you ask me. I is for intention, and this is not something that's specific or time-based. It's more about the way you want to feel and what you want to manifest and how you want, what you want to become. In fact, becomes my latest word at the moment, but it's more about becoming and the whole process of that. So intention for that one. And then the last one is contentment. So again, rather than striving, it's about being content with where we are right now. So the one thing to take away here is don't miss the magic. Create or improve your own magic kit. So the focus is on the core, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, even physically, to create your meaning. And this will allow you to focus on what matters most. But if we just take a quick recap, myth 1, I believe we busted. The myth was about work and life and assuming that it can be separated. And the fact is they're integrated, they're blurred, they're overlapping. So look instead for meaning. Myth 2, go to the extremes to find results. Focus on what matters most, and being out of balance is okay. And myth number 3, busting that, it's about enjoying the journey. And because this is where you'll find the magic. It really is your choice. So on that note, I just want to show you this one little video of Julia to close out my handstand analogy. She goes to the extremes and she can create some pretty amazing magic. So I thought it was worth looking at this video. Amazing balance and amazing core, and I really wish I could do that. So on that note, I would like to open up for questions. I'd love for you to connect with me, ask me any questions personally, and if you do want to take a look at my book or any of the blogs I wrote, just at www.debbieisland.com, and there's links on there to Amazon where you can buy it, or if you live in New Zealand or Australia, I can send you a copy. You can buy a hard copy, but yes.
Thank you very much, Debbie. As Debbie mentioned, if there are any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A section of this live event, and we'll the team will curate those and ask them as they come through. Now, there's some amazing insights there, Debbie, and thanks for sharing a lot of those stories as well. Now, there's a couple of things, I guess, that came out of that. First of all, congratulations on your wedding. Second of all, and third as well, I guess you mentioned that being happy with where you are at right now, and I think that's something that's really, really important. And I guess that means being happy means different things to different people. So making sure that that you are happy with where you are at right now as well, and also you spoke about being present, and I have heard a number of different stories of people, hardworking people, high-level executives, and things like that. And they do say that they do spend a lot of time with their family and their kids and that type of thing. But spending an hour with your family when you're not really there isn't really spending time with them. So being present in that moment and really focusing on where you are, I think again is another point that you made, that is really good to point out. Now, I've got a couple of questions for you and a couple of topics that that I would like to ask you as well. Now, tell me, why is work-life balance so misunderstood?
Okay, I'm going to answer that in just a second, but just to come back to your point on being present, you're dead right. There's just, if you're not present when you're at home with the family, then there's no point in being there, sort of thing. But I remember, well, there's a couple of things on that came to mind then, but one of them is that when you're fully present on whatever you're doing, you have way, way, way more energy. Because if you're thinking about the next thing you're supposed to be doing or the thing that you've just come from or whatever, your energy is so dispersed and you just get really, really tired. So try just going through a day, being present, focused on exactly what you're actually in the middle of doing. I used to, in my corporate days, we'd start a project meeting and I was doing project management and everyone would walk in the door and they'd come from another meeting and they're all chit-chatting and all the rest of it. And then about 5 minutes into the meeting, I remember a few times I'd just say, okay, everyone, stand up. Go out of the room, come back in again, leave everything behind that you you did before, and let's start this meeting over again and be fully present. And the difference, just making them stand up and do that, I think, as well, but just refocusing everyone made a massive difference because they were all present. So yeah, massive,
absolutely.
Massive. Yeah. Okay, so why is work-life balance misunderstood? So many reasons, but I think the big one that I talked about in that first myth is the fact that people really think that they are separate things, that we have to do, work is here and life is there. So there's a lot written these days about work-life integration instead, or work-life management. We spend so much time working that it can't just be a thing that's over there. It's got to be integrated into our life. And I think with people working from home so much, this has become more of a reality, but there's still that guilt of, oh, well, I'm working from home. I can't really just go and put a load of washing on, or I can't really just, but I so think that's absolutely what you should do, because no doubt everyone, as I said in the beginning, everyone's working more hours than they ever have. But if you can try and integrate some of your work and life together and know that I'm going to take an hour out to go and watch my child's soccer game, or I'm going to do that and I'm going to work when I'm most productive, then you're integrating rather than trying to separate them.
Well, you can be in a Microsoft Teams meeting, can't you, and be hanging the washing out or cooking the dinner or something like that?
Absolutely, driving along. Yep, absolutely. And people are always happier if they can do that sort of stuff, and it's like, and you've got to do that. It's got to be about staff well-being and happiness.
Exactly right. Now, the next thing, now you did touch on this throughout your presentation as well. Now, this is something that is debated a lot, but attaining work-life balance. What are your thoughts on whether that can actually be done?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the things I talked about and a lot of the things in my book are probably more about that continual journey bit. So it's about the self-awareness, the EQ or emotional intelligence, if you want to think about it like that, or self-development. So it's not about saying I want to attain work-life balance as much as that I truly believe that people can get the life that they design or they want for themselves. So, and it's not about just work and life. It could be about many aspects of your life, your spiritual life, your health, your financial, your friends, your social. It's every aspect, but it's about what you want. So can it be done? In a sense, yes, but perhaps not in the traditional way that it's been touted.
Very nice indeed. All right, so with the last topic I wanted to I guess raise and have a chat about is I guess work-life balance means different things to different people. Different things make different people happy. So you are your own judge. So there is no right or wrong way to achieve work-life balance or to integrate that or things like that. Now, what works for me may not work for you, may not work for the next person. So obviously having, being your own judge and not allowing, I guess, other people to judge what you're doing. If that works for you, then that works for you. It may not work for the next person. So what are your thoughts around being judged by the type of the type of life you lead or the amount of work you're doing or that type of thing?
Yeah, I think that you said it completely correctly when it's like what works for one may not work for another, and it comes down to that whole matters most thing, where in some periods of your life your children will be your complete focus, and other times your work will be a complete focus. So it's never ever going to be the same for all of us all of the time. And I think that if you can just take those lessons from focusing on what matters most without going too far and hitting the tipping point and going too much to the extreme, that's got to be it's what's important to you and what matters most to you that you should be focused on, rather than what everyone else says is right. So yeah, definitely it's not a one size fits all, that's for sure. We all have our own journeys.
We do. Now, as we mentioned before, the Q&A is open. There hasn't been anybody asking questions. You must have answered everybody's questions throughout your presentation there, Debbie. Now, just a reminder that if you do have any questions for Debbie, or you want to reach out to Debbie in any way, shape or form, or to purchase a copy either electronically or hard copy of Debbie's book, my Work-Life Balance, My Ass, then Debbie, where can they again find that information?
I just put that up, just www.debbieisland.com. Keeps it simple.
debbieisland.com, perfect. Everything you'll need to know will be there. And lastly, if you do want to have a look at or hit me up or ask me any questions about Valo or our solutions, you can hit me up on email or via the website as well. Now, Debbie, we really appreciate your time to jump on this call with us and provide all of that, those insights and that information. There's some really valuable stuff there, and also congratulations on the book. It is a really good read. So if anybody is out there that is looking for a copy, then jump onto Debbie's website and purchase there. There is a free copy, like I said at the start. So if you are registered, we will be drawing that on Monday. If you haven't registered and you just joined via the link, then jump on and register and we will draw that. So once again, Debbie, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And thanks, everybody, for joining.